Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. All we're hearing from liberals is angst about the U.S. military flying to Iran and taking out their nuclear industry. It is as if they want Iran to actually have a nuclear bomb. Well, actually, many of them do. They have the same Barack Obama ideology that says that it's not fair for us to have the nuke and not them, so we need to give them one. But bombing Iran and taking out their nuclear industry, this was the right choice. And really, it was the only choice. From a series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this. It's written, it's an opinion piece by Michael Yosef. He's PhD. He was born in Egypt. He's a senior pastor of Church of the Apostles in Atlanta and founder of a radio broadcast entitled Leading the Way, which reaches 190 countries, way more than this podcast does. But anyway, he starts out by saying this. He says, Israel's audacious strikes on Iran's nuclear and military sites, swiftly followed by U.S. precision attacks on the same infrastructure, have decisively targeted the heart of Iran's nuclear ambitions, exposing the grave threat that they pose. Yet, astonishingly, many of Americans left are waving Iranian flags in the streets, while misinformed citizens and members of Congress flood social media, decrying the U.S. strikes as unnecessary and escalatory. Well, he says, allow me to explain why they're wrong and why Iran's relentless pursuit of nuclear weapons left Israel and the United States with no choice but to act, and act decisively. A state of hostility has existed between Israel and Iran for almost 45 years, ever since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. As a result, death to Israel has been not merely a slogan, but the goal of the Islamic Republic of Iran. On June 13th of 2025, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a massive wave of attacks within Iran, carried out by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, and Israel's Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, or Mossad. Now, the target, Iran's nuclear and military installations. Why did Israel take such bold preemptive action? Why were Israel's leaders convinced that Iran's nuclear program threatened the very existence of the Jewish state? Well, few Westerners understand how the tensions between Iran and Israel have largely been driven by the fanatical theological beliefs of Iran's ruling elite. And we need to understand why Shiite Islam, the dominant belief system of Iran, makes Cold War models of nuclear deterrence obsolete. Islam is not a monolithic faith. And neither is Christianity, by the way. Much of Christianity is divided into Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox branches, while Islam is also deeply divided, most significantly between Sunnis and Shiites. The division within Islam, however, are far more violent than any disagreements within present-day Christianity and have produced centuries of war and death. The schism within Islam dates back to the death of Muhammad in AD 632, when a dispute arose over who should lead the Muslim community. Sunnis supported Abu Bakr, a companion of Muhammad. Shiites backed Muhammad's son-in-law, Ali. This dispute produced a violent split that has raged for nearly 14 centuries. Now, the defining moment of Shiite history was the martyrdom of Husayn, the grandson of Muhammad, at the Battle of Karbala in AD 680. Now, Hussein was killed by forces loyal to the Sunni-dominated um, Umayyad, I believe is how you pronounce that, caliphate. To Shiites, the Karbala still symbolizes righteous resistance against opposition and false doctrine. Some Shia movements consider themselves divinely appointed minorities, struggling against corrupt Sunni majorities. Shiites uh, comprise only about 10 to 15% actually of the Muslims of the world. Iran, however, has been a Shiite stronghold since 1501 when the Safavid dynasty declared Twelver Shiism the state religion of Persia. Now, Twelver Shiism is centered on the belief that the Twelver Imam, the Mahdi, according to Twelver belief, there were 12 imams, which rightful successors to Muhammad, all from Ali's lineage, by the way. The 12 was Muhammad, Allah, Mahdi, who supposedly went into occultation. It's a miraculous hiddenness. So he miraculously hid himself somewhere. And as a child in the 9th century, he supposedly did this. Now, Twelvers believe that the 12th Imam is still alive and will one day come forth to impose Islamic rule over the world. And here's the rub, okay? Here's where Iran's present day nuclear doctrines meet Iran's ancient theological doctrines. Some factions within Iran's clerical leadership believe that the Mahdi's return will be hastened by global destruction and war. Yeah, these radical scholars teach that apocalyptic war is a necessary requirement for the Mahdi to be revealed. And in this view, Iran's struggle against Israel and Western civilization is part of a divine plan for the return of Mahdi. This theological doctrine makes a nuclear-armed Iran unthinkably dangerous, of course. During the Cold War, the logic of mutually assured destruction kept nuclear superpowers from attacking each other because, any nuclear attack would invite annihilation. But if Iran's leaders believe that nuclear war would hasten the return of a long prophesied Messiah figure, well, they would actually be highly motivated to start a nuclear war, regardless of the consequences. Iran's apocalyptic clerics have a powerful incentive to pull the nuclear trigger, the fulfillment of ancient prophecies and the establishment of a global caliphate. Do Iran's leaders really dream of launching a nuclear war, you might ask? Well, in October of 2003, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, issued a fatwa, which is a religious ruling, declaring nuclear weapons an un-Islamic and forbidden. The Iranian government has repeatedly cited this fatwa and claimed that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes only. Western analysis, however, well, they are skeptical of Iran's claims, to put it mildly. Peaceful nuclear technologies, the power plants or nuclear medicine, require low enrichment of uranium, which, containing no more than like 20% of isotope uranium. The most commercial nuclear power plants only use like 2 to 4% uranium. Uranium-235, by the way. But Iran is enriching uranium to levels above 60%, far beyond any peaceful use of nuclear energy. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran has amassed enough highly enriched uranium to assemble 9 nuclear warheads. This troubling development has prompted Israel to eliminate the threat of Iran's nuclear program. And while not all Iranian leaders believe they can hasten the Mahdi's return through war, the prevalence of such views with Tehran threatens threatens to transform the Middle East into a nuclear hellscape. That is why Western and Israeli policymakers, did what they had to do. In these uncertain days, Christians around the world must unite in prayer. We easily forget that there are many Christian believers in Iran right now suffering intense persecution. We must pray for their strength and safety, and for God to give the Iranian and the Israeli people wisdom for the days ahead. Pray also that in this time of war, God will turn many hearts back to him. But even though we had very little choice, it was a very big deal in my estimation, and an act of courage on Trump's part to do what he had to do, and to do what he did. In an opinion piece by Ben Shapiro, he says that President Trump's strike on Iran is a seminal turning point for American foreign policy. For years and years and years, we have been boxed into the idea that every war is the Iraqi war. Critics of President Trump, of peace through strength, going all the way back to World War II, particularly on the left, but now on the horseshoe theory right as well, have suggested that people who do advocate for American military action liken everything to the lead up to World War II, to Neville Chamberlain and Munich. They say not everything is World War II, not every war is the Iraqi war. You might notice that the vast bevy of people who keep complaining about President Trump's strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities keep comparing this to the war in Iraq, and that's crazy. These people who keep saying that a one-off strike on a nuclear facility, which is a significantly more like killing Osama bin Laden or killing Qasem Soleimani or something like that, is somehow more akin to the Iraqi war, a full-scale, hundreds of thousands of troops ground invasion of a country in the Middle East, followed by a 12-year effort to rebuild the country and remold the government there. You have to be pretty empty-headed to make that comparison. But there is an Iraq war syndrome that has set in the American body politic that suggests that every military action is like the Iraqi war. It's very much like the Vietnam War syndrome that set in after the end of the Vietnam War, when every military action was supposed to be exactly what America did in Vietnam. It took Ronald Reagan breaking the Soviet Union in order for that to begin to end, and truly ended when George H.W. Bush helped win the first Gulf War. The lesson of Vietnam and Iraq is not military power or the threat of its use by the United States is bad, or even worse, the United States itself is bad, which is an argument that is being made all the time by the horseshoe theory left and the horseshoe theory right. The real lesson here is that victory is a possibility. Victory can be achieved if the commitment is clear and if the goal is defined. President Trump had a goal. He defined that goal. He made a commitment to that goal. And then he pursued an action in pursuit of that goal. The same people who are suggesting that President Trump is wrong to bomb the nuclear facilities are the same people who suggested that the United States was wrong to use the atomic bomb at the end of World War II, or that America had been historically evil over the course of decades. The Howard Zinn left and the Tucker Carlson right shake hands on this particular prospect. But that perspective is wrong. And it's not just wrong, it is nefariously bad perspective because it damages America. The world is better off because of American power, properly used. Of course, power can be misused. Anyone can misuse their power. where we're the most powerful country in the world, in the history of the world, really, and with the most powerful military in the history of the world. But when you use your power properly, you can effectuate good things happening. President Trump is not George W. Bush. He ran against George W. Bush's foreign policy. President Trump has never engaged in a long-term nation-building project, nor will he. He defined his mission specifically. I do not actually think that the people warning about a quagmire are saying something understandable. I think they are saying something dishonest. I think they are lying to you. Israel and the United States are not talking about regime change. When President Trump says that there may be regime change in Iran, he means from the Iranian people. That's the same thing that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said. Do you think Netanyahu, from a country of 9.7 million people, 2 million of whom are Arabs and 2 million of whom are ultra-Orthodox Jews, that tiny country is going to deploy hundreds of thousands of troops to Iran to engage in nation building? Do you think the United States is going to do that too? If Iranians don't overthrow the regime, well, that's their prerogative. But that does not mean that you allow that regime to go nuclear. All of this raises a question. What exactly is the opposition? What is the opposition here? What is the case against the strike on Iran? You can basically make three cases: the constitutional, the pragmatic, and the ideological. He says, I think here, I think there are a lot of people who are making the constitutional and pragmatic arguments who secretly want to make the ideological argument. The ideological argument is that America is bad, that when America involves itself in foreign policy, we are doing something evil and immoral, that our enemies, our geopolitical opponents, never have their own philosophy or their own interests. They are always, in every case, driven by American blowback. The only reason people are bad in the world is because America did a bad thing to them, and then those people turn bad. That, of course, is ignorant. It is stupid and is wrong. Civilians have different interests. Countries have different interests. Those countries are driven by interests that are not always about America. Iran pursued regional domination in spite of what America was doing, not because America was a threat to Iran. Iran decided that it wanted to obliterate Israel, wanted to wipe Saudi Arabia off the map, and wanted to take control of Yemen, not because of America, but because that is the Iranian goal. Russia is invading Ukraine because that has been their longstanding policy, not because Ukraine was moving in a more pro-American direction. Russia decided it wanted to invade Ukraine because it had been Russian policy since the 1990s to reunify with Ukraine, or at least turn it into a proxy regime. And countries have their own rationales. The ideological case, Howard Zinn America hating first case, has been adopted by many on the horseshoe theory right. Then there are people masquerading as constitutionalists who are interested in the constitutionality of what Trump is doing. This idea that the War Powers Act somehow prevents the president of the United States from engaging in a one-off strike is absolutely sheer nonsense. It is not true. First of all, there's serious doubt as to whether the War Powers Resolution passed by Congress in 1973 is even constitutional. It may, in fact, violate Article 2, the prerogatives of the President of the United States. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution says this: the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of several states. The president is the Commander-in-Chief. Only Congress has the power to declare war under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. But did we declare war against Iran? Is there a war against Iran? One-off airstrikes do not mean a full-scale war against a country. They don't. If that's true, then we've been at war many, 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 many times since World War II, all across the globe. But that is not what war constitutes. The Supreme Court has said so. The War Powers Resolution states, quote, in the absence of the declaration of war, the president must report to Congress within 48 hours after introducing U.S. military forces in hostilities, which must end within 60 days unless Congress permits otherwise, unquote. There's only one problem. Do you think the United States is engaging in 60 days of on-the-ground hostilities with Iran? We barely engaged in 37 hours of hostilities with Iran. Does this amount to a War Powers Resolution violation? Then there are those people deeply worried about the pragmatic effect of this, who were not worried a few years ago about President Trump killing Soleimani, and who didn't seem particularly worried 5 minutes ago before all this happened, when Iran had terror cells throughout the West, but now they're very, very worried. Iran has been pursuing terror acts, including an attempted assassination of the current president of the United States, for decades. At this point, they have planted terror cells all throughout the world. If the idea is that planting terror cells buys Iran impunity, and Iran can now act with complete impunity all over the globe, pursuing nuclear weapons and the means, and that means that you can't do anything about it. Well, then what is the purpose of American foreign policy? I mean, really, what is the purpose? He says, I'm not saying that there isn't a risk when you take action. I'm saying that the greater risk would be a nuclear-armed Iran with terror cells all across the West. That's the bigger risk. This pragmatic concern is, in reality, something else. It is a belief that America's foreign policy is inherently bad, that America is the nefarious actor in the world. It's wrong and it's stupid. President Trump knew exactly what he was doing when he ordered the strike on Iran, and he was obviously correct. And I'd say that Iran is really, with all of these strikes, it is now very much a devastated country. But there is one card that they're threatening to play against us. The State Department issued a rare worldwide caution alert on Sunday amid concerns about a heightened risk of terror attacks by Iranian sleeper cells. A White House official told the Daily Wire that they are staying vigilant and that the Trump administration will use all resources available to protect both the United States and its assets abroad. The bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security's National Terrorism Advisory System on Sunday warned that the ongoing Iran conflict is causing a heightened threat environment in the United States. The alert issued on Sunday warns American citizens overseas to exercise increased caution, adding that there is potential for demonstrations against U.S. citizens and interests abroad. According to NBC, Iran sent a message to Trump through an emissary at the G7 summit in Canada last week, warning that it could activate sleeper cells, terror cells, if he attacked. And Trump left the summit early to return to the White House to consider his options amid the escalation between Israel and Iran at the time. The Department of Homeland Security cited Iran's history of launching cyber attacks and targeting United States government officials. He added that there is a possibility of terrorists within the United States mobilizing as part of a response to Trump's Sunday night strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. Quote, the likelihood of violent extremists in the homeland independently mobilizing to violence in response to the conflict would likely increase if Iran's leadership issued a religious ruling calling for retaliatory violence against targets in the homeland. This is what it said. Quote, multiple recent homeland terrorist attacks have been motivated by anti-Semitic and anti-Israel sentiment, and the ongoing Israeli-Iran conflict could contribute to U.S.-based individuals plotting additional attacks, unquote. It adds that the conflict could motivate violent extremists and hate crime perpetrators to attack targets that are Jewish, pro-Israel, or linked to the United States government or military. That bulletin actually expires on September 22nd. The White House border czar, Tom Homan, said that there is a risk posed by the 1,272 Iranian nationals who illegally crossed the border during the Biden administration. Quote, over 2 million people crossed that border. We don't know who they are, where they came from, because they got away. Because Border Patrol is so overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis that Biden created that over 2 million people crossed the border and got away. That's what Holman told Fox News on a feature of Sunday morning features. Quote, that is my biggest concern, he said. And that's what created the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen, unquote. And following the attack on Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, Iranian nuclear, these are the three Iranian nuclear sites. Trump warned that any retaliation by Iran against the U.S. Will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight, he said. But we have actually been busy neutralizing the threat. Federal immigration officials arrested 11 Iranian nationals since Sunday, including a former Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps member and admitted connections to Hezbollah, and in addition, individual on the U.S. terrorist watch list. They got him. The operations, which occurred amid heightened tensions following the U.S. strikes on the nuclear facilities, spanned 8 states and 9 cities, with all 11 Iranians accused of crimes exceeding civil immigration violations, according to CBS News. The arrests come as security experts warn that Iran's proxy network, which includes Hezbollah and other terrorist groups, has established connections with the United States that could be activated. Federal agents discovered an Islamic Republic of Iran Army identification card on Ribvar Karmi when he was apprehended in Alabama. He served as an Iranian Army sniper from 2018 to 2021 and entered the U.S. in October of last year on a K-1 visa for immigrants engaged to American citizens. Karmi is set to remain in ICE custody until removal proceedings begin. Mehran Makari Sahel, arrested in Minnesota, is a former member of the Iranian military elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and had admitted connections to Hezbollah, according to ICE. Another arrestee, Yosef Mehrado, had been living illegally in America for nearly 8 years after lying on a visa application. He was apprehended on Sunday in Mississippi, 4 months after being added to the U.S. terror watch list. During the last fiscal year, ICE arrested just 68 Iranian foreign nationals. Quote, we have been saying we are getting the worst of the worst out. And we are. This is what DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin told CBS News. Said, we don't wait until a military operation to execute. We proactively deliver on President Trump's mandate to secure the homeland. ICE told CBS the arrests represent part of the Trump administration's illegal immigration crackdown, with average daily arrests. This is average daily arrests climbing from 660 in President Donald Trump's first 100 days to 1,200 in June, as the White House aims for 3,000 arrests per day. In addition to the 11 Iranians arrested over the past 48 hours, Lynette Vartian was actually a U.S. citizen and was apprehended during the operation. She faces federal charges because she was threatening to shoot officers in the head when they came to arrest a person that she was living with. The Department of Homeland Security activated its National Terrorism Advisory System just hours after the weekend strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities. And the advisory warned of potential retaliatory actions, including physical attacks on cyber operations targeting American infrastructure. And the Trump administration has directed federal agencies to increase monitoring of suspected Iranian agents and sympathizers following the weekend's military actions. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of things going on there. Obviously, this was an action that had to be done. I was glad to see when Iran went in and when Israel went in and did their thing to Iran, and I was really, really glad to see that we came in and finished the job by taking out the nuclear facilities that really only we could do. I mean, that was our job, because we have the bunker busters that can do that. Nobody else does. And so I was really glad to see that happen. It was really, we had no choice. There was no choice to leave Iran with a nuclear weapon. That is just not an option. And you may think differently. I would love to hear from you on it. Of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. We're on YouTube. I would love to have you share, like, and subscribe. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.